Okay, thanks, Pastor Amber. It's true. I have an exciting announcement that you just have to hold on to your seats for, and we're going to get there. There's this moment in Acts chapter 17 where Paul is trying to tell people about Jesus. And his heart aches that these people would know the Jesus that he's known. They know the life that Jesus has to give. They know what Jesus has come to do in the world, to take broken things and make them whole. And he's speaking the truth. And they turn to one another and they say, "What is this babbler saying?" Have you guys ever been there before? Where you're like trying to talk about Jesus. You're trying to tell people, maybe it's around the dinner table, maybe it's out for drinks with friends, maybe it just kind of comes up, and maybe you're just excited about the work Jesus is doing in your life, and you're trying to explain it, you're trying to talk, and you just feel like a babbler. Like, is anything I'm saying are they even hearing anything? Maybe it's gone so poorly for you that you have decided never again. Nope, not going to do that again. Like, tried that one time. I remember how it went. Nope, never again. Maybe you just don't feel like you know enough. And if you start speaking, you're going to feel like a babbler. I felt like a babbler a lot. It's a pretty helpless feeling, as you know. Sometimes after I try and talk to someone about Jesus, I think, did I say too much? Sometimes I think, did I say enough? And underneath these kind of fears, feeling like a babbler, is this truth, this ache that we want people to know the Jesus who's changed our lives. Jesus has done something. He's done something not just for us, but for our world. He's come to take broken things and make them whole again. And we want our friends and our neighbors and our family and our coworkers and our classmates and our kiddos and our grandkids and our granddads and fill in the blank. We want them to know. But we often feel like a babbler. And maybe, how did we kind of get this feeling? Well, maybe no one's come alongside you and kind of helped you know how to talk to someone about Jesus. It's possible. Maybe you've only seen it done poorly. You remember that Thanksgiving table conversation? You remember when Granddad got up and pointed his finger at his granddaughter and said, and you're like, nope, not doing that, not going there. Maybe you've never just seen it done well. Let's look at Paul. What did this babbler do? And so we have Bibles on the sides of the aisles. Go ahead, grab a Bible, pass it down. And these Bibles are going to be, we're going to open to page 899 and to Acts 17. And we're just going to read a little bit about this babbler. And so I'm just, page 899, big number 17, little number 16. While Paul was waiting for his friends in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. So Paul enters this city, and he observes, and Paul felt the ache. He's heartbroken because he wants this city and the people around it to know that Jesus has come to take broken things and make them whole. That Jesus is at work to take our broken world and make it whole. That Jesus invites us to know him, that the living God has come in loving pursuit of each and every one of them. And he's heartbroken because they don't know this. They don't get this. And so he feels this ache, and he's trying. He's trying to get this message across without offending or really Bible bludgeoning them. He's trying to get this message across, and he's looking for places conducive to having spiritual conversations, and he finds some. The synagogue was the place where Jewish people would meet for religious worship, and he goes to the synagogue, and he has spiritual conversation with Jews and God-fearing Greeks who are interested in the Jewish God, which is his God. And then he goes to the marketplace, and the marketplace was where people hung out. And so he finds these places conducive to having spiritual conversations, and he wants them to know the Jesus who's worth his very life and worth theirs too. And so he tries telling them about him. And let's keep reading, 17 verse 18. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with them. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" So here we go, calling him a babbler. But let's keep going. Others remarked, "Well, he seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean." All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. And Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, we're going to pause right there. So Paul found the space. And the space that is most conducive to having spiritual conversations, it was called the Areopagus. And the Areopagus, this was the space where you could freely exchange ideas. This was the space where you voiced your doubts, where you voiced your questions, where you voiced your uncertainties, where you could share whatever you were feeling in safety, without threat. This was the place for the deconstructors and the reconstructors. This was it. It was Areopagus. And in this environment conducive to conversation, what did Paul do? Well, I could spend a whole message picking apart his message from verse 22 to verse 31, but that would be a whole nother sermon. So I just want to make a few observations about it. He told him about Jesus. Paul told him about Jesus, and the message of Jesus doesn't change, but the people and the context that you're delivering it to are always changing. And so Paul has become a student of the people that he's trying to share with Jesus about. And he tries to communicate the unchanging message of Jesus to a different culture and a different type of people. And in our Bibles, we kind of have this speech of Paul's. But they didn't have the printing press. They didn't have unlimited space where they could just write scroll after scroll after scroll. Producing print material costs quite a bit of money in this day. So we kind of got to use our imagination and expand this moment. So this wasn't just Paul delivering a speech like a throwdown. This was like a prolonged conversation, a prolonged spiritual discussion in a safe space where people could freely exchange their ideas, where people could talk about it, and he's telling them about Jesus. And I do want to say this, though. Because Paul loved Jesus, and because Paul wanted them to know about Jesus, notice after they called him a babbler, it didn't stop him. Being called a babbler didn't shut him up. He was okay feeling like a babbler. He was okay being called a babbler because there were eternal matters at stake. And he wanted people to know the Jesus that takes broken things and makes them whole. So what was their response to him? Well, you can kind of skip down to Acts chapter 17, verse 32 and 33. I'm just going to read some selections from there where we read his response, or their response to him. Some of them sneered. Some translations read scoffed. But others said, "We want to hear you again on this subject." And some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. So if there were a safe place to exchange ideas, to be open and honest about doubts and questions and uncertainties and just put it all out there, it is the Areopagus, and Paul is right there. And after this conversation about Jesus, some people think he's crazy. Some people are like, well, we want to hear more about that. And some people believe. Their response was not Paul's responsibility. Paul trusted Jesus with their response. So Paul knows, okay, Jesus has changed my life. I want to find places to have these sorts of conversations. I want to meet people who want to have these sorts of conversations. But Paul knows, but it's ultimately not my job to change their minds. I can't do that. I can tell about Jesus. I can speak about Jesus. But ultimately, it's the work of Jesus to open ears, to open eyes, to soften hearts, to change lives. And I don't know about you guys, but that kind of takes the pressure off, doesn't it? It's okay to feel like a babbler sometimes because ultimately Jesus is the one working. We just point to him. We talk about him. So what do we do? Maybe you're like, man, my friends need a space to explore the story of Jesus. Where are the spaces conducive to these types of conversations? Can we create an environment conducive to spiritual conversation? How do I sound less like a babbler? Maybe that's a question you're asking yourself. Well, I can't be more excited to tell you guys where we're headed as a church in the coming months. Because what's coming is a space conducive to those conversations. What's coming is a space where we'll feel less like a babbler and more equipped for these sorts of conversations when they happen around the coffee table and when they happen around beers at a happy hour with coworkers and when they happen in the workspace and when they happen in our driveways with our neighbors. What's coming is an opportunity for you to invite your fill in the blanks. Invite your neighbor, your coworker, your classmate, your child, your grandparent, your friend to this space. We're going to actually, in the fall, pause our normal group programming, so our normal small groups. And on Thursday nights from 6 to 7:30 p.m., we're going to offer a meal, we're going to offer childcare, and we're going to offer conversation. It'll be a chance to connect in community with one another, but it'll also be a chance to bring people in who maybe aren't ready for Sundays. And so I want to show you this video and tell you about Alpha.
Having conversations about life, faith, and Jesus is hard. And this is interesting because at some point, everyone wrestles with life's big questions. Questions about hope, purpose, meaning, and love. Imagine creating a space where people in our community, our friends, neighbors, and coworkers, can come and have conversations in a way that is authentic and unforced. Where leaders don't need to have all the answers, and anyone can ask tough questions and share honestly about what they believe. That's what Alpha is all about. Alpha started in a church in London years ago with a simple idea to engage friends who might not typically go to church. Lives were transformed, and it began to grow all over the world. Today, you can find Alpha in schools, coffee shops, church buildings, prisons, and homes. And so far, millions of people have experienced Alpha. So what is Alpha? Alpha is a series of interactive sessions exploring the basics of the Christian faith. In each session, you eat food, listen to a talk, and have discussions in small groups. Eating food together creates space for people to connect, relax, and build friendships. The talks tackle core questions about life and faith from a Christian perspective. And the discussion allows people to unpack these ideas without fear of being corrected or judged. All of this is done in a fun environment where anyone is welcome. By running Alpha, you're creating a space where people can connect with each other and connect with God. Sign up, get started, run Alpha today.
We're launching Alpha because we want to be the kind of church that feels the ache, that finds the space, that speaks of Jesus and trusts Jesus with the response. And we're telling you now because we actually need you to clear your Thursdays beginning September 17th for 10 weeks. Thursday night, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Have you ever had someone ask you the question, what would you do if money weren't an issue? I'm like, man, what kind of question is that? Like, it's hard to even wrap my mind around it sometimes. But beginning last fall, if people were to ask me that question about ministry and church, I would have said, Alpha. I do Alpha. My friend from Minnesota, he started a church in April. So it's been a little over a year. And when they started their church did two things: Sunday mornings and Alpha. And because it was so important to them. My brother has been a part of Alpha at the church he was at in Sacramento, California. And now he and his wife live in Greenville, South Carolina. And they've been a part of Alpha at both churches. Those are very different places to live, South Carolina and Northern California. And he's seen fruit in both spots with different types of people, mainly deconstructors, mainly people who just need a safe space to explore. I listen to a pastor occasionally from California, and he was saying Alpha is not just for seekers. It makes its way into the DNA of our church. Our hearts change for those who aren't walking with Jesus. We're better equipped because we start having the conversations at Alpha around those tables. We're better equipped for when the conversations happen in our workspace and at happy hour and in our driveways. He said it also takes Sundays to the next level because as we do Alpha, we begin to see the guest and the newcomer in a special way. But the thing that put me over the edge was actually my friend in Farmington, Utah. His name's Austin Glenn. He helped start a church in Farmington called King's Cross Church. And they would have more people on Thursday nights at Alpha than they would have at church on Sunday mornings. The response was wild. But part of the reason for the response was there are people who aren't ready. They don't feel like they're ready for this yet. But they can do a Thursday night with dinner and childcare. And he's got stories where some sneer, some say, tell me more, and some believe. You know, when I invite new folks to the front, I tell them, like, hey, we're a space where your doubts and your questions and all that stuff, like, you can bring it. You can be honest about it. We don't have anyone to impress. We don't have anything to hide. And I tell them that. But the reality is you actually have to stick around beyond a Sunday to get that. You'll experience it. If you're around the front long enough and you stay for coffee and donuts afterward and start getting to know people, and if you go to an event and if you begin to plug into the life of the church or plug into a group, you will begin to experience it. But the reality is Sundays themselves, this hour, is not really conducive to conversation. We sing songs. We hear a welcome. I teach. We sing some more songs. And then we're out. And so what Alpha does is will help us create a space conducive for the very thing we're hoping for in the lives of our neighbors, our friends, our family, our coworkers, our classmates, our kiddos. And so the question then became, could we find a space for 100+ adults and childcare on a weeknight? Now, perhaps one of the most important things about Alpha is a meal. Sharing a meal together. And that is an endeavor if we're the ones who need to feed 100 people. And if you volunteer with the front, you and I both know you probably show up a lot for a lot of things. And you're like, Nate, one more thing to like volunteer with, like providing food for 100 people. I feel you and I hear you. And so what I thought is it possible to get these, could we get the money to get these meals catered so we're not on the hook for 100 plus people? Could we get the money to pay for childcare so that some of our people could participate? And the thing about a meal is, man, if you read Luke's gospel, Luke must have been a foodie or something. Because you read it, and Jesus is either going to a meal, at a meal, or coming from a meal. He's at and there's something magic about eating together. And so we began to think, could we feed 100 adults and provide childcare? And there's a phrase I stole from Jamie Flores 15 years ago. And she told me, God's will, God's bill. And so I began to talk to Pastor Amber about this. I began to talk to Robin about this. I began to talk to a few people about hosting Alpha. And I decided, you know what I need to do? I need to make a big ask of some people who help get the front off the ground. Now, if you don't know how we work financially at the front, we're an open book. I'll answer any questions, including how much I get paid, where we spend money, where, any of that stuff. We don't think we need to hide that or be weird about that. We want to be open about it. But part of our funding structure is we have individuals and churches outside of the front church who are giving to the front because they believe it's important to have a non-denominational Christian church in Bluffdale, Utah. And so about 50% of our budget, 100% when we started, but about 50% of the money that comes in right now are from those outside givers who give so that the front can be possible. And about 50% of the giving comes from you guys. And eventually we want to make it to the place where these guys who are giving can be freed up to give to other new churches and other people doing some really cool, God-honoring work. And we can be self-sufficient where the money that's required for us to operate is coming all internally. And then we want to also be people who give to start new things as well. And so, but right now we're like 50-50. And so I just felt prompted by the Lord in December of 2025 to put it out there and say, hey, we're thinking about doing Alpha, as in I'm thinking about it. But this is not even an option because we don't have the money to cater food. I feel like our volunteers will be at capacity. This is not an option unless God provides in a significant way. And God provided with a donor who gave $10,000 so that we can host Alpha. I applied for a grant that gives ministries money. I applied for one for Alpha. And God provided another $5,000 from them so that we can host Alpha. So God has provided to make this possible for us so that we can cater meals, so that we can rent the space, so that we can pay childcare, so that we're free to participate. And some of us will have more than just a participatory role. I'll get into that in a minute. But God has provided so that we can create a safe space, an Areopagus, where there's an exchange of ideas and where we can talk about Jesus and where we can grow and not feeling so much like a babbler, and where some people might not get it, but some people will say, tell me more, and some people will believe. So where do we go from here? Well, like Paul, I think we feel the ache for our friends and neighbors, especially those who aren't ready to come on Sundays yet. I think we also feel like babblers. And Alpha will provide us with a space to invite our neighbors and our friends and our family and our classmates and our coworkers and our kiddos. And Alpha will also provide this space where we can begin to not feel so much like a babbler because we're becoming used to having these sorts of conversations in a safe environment. Alpha helps us find the space. We feel the ache. Alpha helps us find the space. And our mission is to make Jesus known where he is not, and we will trust Jesus with the response. Jesus does what he's going to do in people's hearts and their friends. This is not like just a program. This is us becoming the kind of church we want to be. So we're telling you now because we'll need a few of you to step into some specific roles. Table conversation leaders, we're going to need some of those. We are going to need a little bit of tear down and welcome team. We're going to use Bluffdale City Hall on Thursday nights for this. We need a few people to help with maybe graphic design and some promotional materials, potentially some web design. I can show you how that works. We need all of you to begin to think about the people you feel that ache for. Who is that? You just want them to know the Jesus who has come to take broken things and make them whole. Who are the people that come to your mind when you think about that? We need you to begin thinking about that and pray for them. Pray that they might come to this space, to Alpha. And then we need you to clear Thursdays. Move things around if you need to. You got a lot of lead time, and you're going to begin to hear about this. Not every Sunday, but multiple Sundays a month. We're going to begin to talk about Alpha. We're going to begin to talk about what's coming, and just keep it on your radar. You won't get like a full message like I'm giving today on Acts 17 in Alpha, but you're going to hear it in announcements. You're going to hear stories of lives who are changed. You're going to hear more about how you can get involved. And so clear your Thursdays. And that's why we're going to end at the communion table today. Because before Alpha is ever a meal we host for our neighbors, Christianity begins with a meal Jesus gives to us. When Jesus wanted to explain what his death was about to his disciples, he didn't give them a bunch of theories. He didn't give them like lengthy explanations. He gave them a meal. He gave them bread and a cup. The Gospel according to Luke. Luke writes, Jesus took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and he gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." There's two words in that passage that I love. And he says them twice. For you. This is my body broken for you. This is my blood poured out for you. This is the good news we want our friends and neighbors, classmates, kiddos, grandparents, grandchildren to know. That Jesus' body was broken so we could be made whole. That Jesus' blood was poured out for the forgiveness of sin. That Jesus died and rose again so that people far from God can be brought near. And so we come to this table confessing our need. And when I say confessing our need for Jesus, what I mean is confessing that we bring nothing. This isn't about, hey, Jesus, look at my religious resume or my put together life or how well I'm doing or how I'm ticking all the religious check boxes. No, this is none of that. We come to the table saying, Jesus, we needed you and need you for everything. We can't put ourselves right with God. You put us right with God. We can't wash ourselves clean. You wash us clean. Your body was broken so that we could be made whole. Your blood poured out so that we could be forgiven. And so I love when we do communion because maybe you're an eye closer when you're singing. You know, we're singing songs here in a few minutes and you close your eyes and you sing. Open them up for a second. And watch the line of people at this table, because you will witness something beautiful. What you will witness is not a bunch of put-together people who look the part, act the part, are the part. No, what you're going to see is a bunch of broken people coming down, because that's the requirement to take communion. You're admitting, I need a Jesus. I'm broken. I need him to make me whole. You see a bunch of people confessing their need for Jesus, confessing their need for his life and his presence in their life, confessing that I don't have it put together, but for the grace of God, I am falling apart. And just to see that is a thing of beauty in the church. Some people wonder, like, should I take communion? Should I not take communion? How does this work? I would say this: the only requirement to take communion at the front church is to admit you need Jesus. You needed him to die on a cross for your sin, be buried, be raised on the third day, and you need his new life at work in you. And if that's you, then feel free to come take communion when we do it. And if you're like, I don't know if I'm there yet, that's okay. We're creating the front for you. We're creating Alpha for you. You can stand when we all stand to sing, and you can sing the songs or listen and let those words just wash over you. And no one's going to look at you weird or strange for not coming down here either. But I do want you to pay attention to the people who are coming down, because I do want you to see that this room is filled with people who are broken and need Jesus to make them whole. We have a gluten-free option and a normal option. So when you take the bread to remember Jesus' body broken for you, if you take a gluten-free bread, make sure to use the cup that's right next to it. And if you take a normal bread, make sure to use the cup next to that. And what we do is we just play 2 songs. And during these songs, you're free to come, to admit your need for Jesus, to come and take communion. Before we invite anyone else to the table or to Alpha or to church, we come again to receive from Jesus Christ ourselves. We come remembering he came for us. He shows us exactly what God is like. He died for us. He was raised for us. And he offers us new life with him. We come to celebrate what he's done for us. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for what you have done for us. And right now, Lord, we are a bunch of broken people. Broken people, Lord. But you are the one who's come to make us new. You are the one who's come to make us whole. You are the one who's come to redeem and restore and renew. Lord, you're the one who, when there are things that stood between us and our relationship with God, you took them. You bore them on yourself on the cross. You buried them in the grave, and you were raised to new life. And it is a scandal beyond all scandal. But you offer us your new life in exchange for our sin-filled life. You offer to wash us in exchange for us just admitting we need you. And so we come, admitting our need for you. We come praising you, your body broken for us, your blood poured out for us. And we come aching for the people in our lives to know that life you offer. We ask that you would move in our church and in our neighborhood and in our community and in our valley and in our world. In your name.